Hi, Nigel. It is important to see where we go from here, but the journey has been such a long one, such a volatile one. We've seen a lot of stocks move around. In just the last 6 months, we've seen a big jump in all the auto stocks, in the FMCG stocks, and a big underperformance coming in from IT, pharma, and metals. But as we do that, let's also cut across to the Finance Minister, who's speaking at an event.
And the leadership of the Prime Minister, which together gave us the guidance, but also the tenacity, endurance, but also the spirit to fight, all of which I think has resulted in getting India where it is today. And in this, the question that you asked as to what held you back and what made you remain where you are in taking the call, the way we've taken, rather than the way loosening the purse and throwing money as though that will give the solution. I think the question is for them to say as to why they thought that was the blanket solution. Because logic or reasoning will tell you that once you are consulting different sections and they have voiced their concern, each differing from the other, or slightly at least differing from another, the solution had to be given to each according to the way they would want. And therefore, we thought if the consultations are ongoing and if consultations are coming up with concrete suggestions, each to his comfort, each section to their comfort, we thought that's the best way. So it is one thing to listen to advice of, let's say, very respected economists. I have no criticism to offer to them. They had their viewpoint from the point of view of the theory as they teach. But ultimately, I think each country had its own way of solving its problems. We've come out well, and thanks to the credit of the people and their literally the confidence that you talk about, Maria Angelo. They acquired the confidence. They thought it was for them to fight through, and the government did stand by them.
So let me take the point I made a little bit earlier. India's economy getting to where it is now, being the 5th largest economy. Which are now going to be the big focus areas for you to move India from being the 5th largest economy further up the ladder, maybe to the 3rd? Because in power purchase parity, we already are the 3rd. Clearly, we're headed for growth, bigger growth than most others at this moment, and that is quite clear. But the question will be about the balance within the economy, which portions get more attention and which ones get moderated, because a challenge has been thrown out by the Prime Minister for India to be a developed nation by time we turn 100. And I think it's a wonderful way to look at India. So where is your big focus going to be now?
I think the driver would be engaging the youth power. So sectors which have great potential for engaging them, and when I say youth, I mean youth with all sets of skills. You can start from the bottom to the top, which speaks about frontier technology related skills, innovative skills, or STEM sciences skills, or it can just be very, at the bottom, skilled, not so skilled workers. So when you're planning for the Indian economy for the next 25 years, which we are calling Amrit Kal, and PM has highlighted champion sectors will be the ones with which we start off. But the first litmus test would be how would it benefit the workforce? Some at the leadership level and some at the bottom, or some in the middle. But people come out of universities, colleges, schools with different sets of skills. All of them need prospects for the future. And in that prospect is where the next 25 years is going to be geared. So that will be the testing measure. But otherwise, of course, I will stretch the argument a bit more, not so much to make it a tenuous argument, but it is a fact that 3-4 years ago, when in Davos all of us heard Industrial Revolution 4.2, Web 3, IoT, artificial intelligence. I'm happy to say that India in the last 3-4 years has actually built its capacities on these. Today, if India is showing the way on digital payments, digital influence into your medical practice, setting up of 75 digital derived centers of learning, setting up of 75 digital banking. 75 is because we want to also remember that it happened in the 5th year of independence. The digitization, the rapid influence of digitization, even in areas like agriculture. So we've shown the way since after what we heard in Davos. So that is, I think, the kind of direction. Move it more towards digitization, even more, and also make sure the workforce participation is at its maximum.
So let me take two comments, two of the things you mentioned. One is labor policy. How do we get more people sustainable economic opportunities? How do we ensure that the system is fair and encouraging of jobs? Because we have had this challenge, it's probably the single biggest challenge for us as a nation is to ensure the standard of living for all Indians. And I would imagine more than anything else, that's one thing we have to address. But of course, we have to address it through growth. That's the only positive way to do this. So is there a tweak or a change required in our policy to encourage more hiring and better compensation and better work conditions?
Well, if I take the example of the PLI, the Productivity Linked Incentive Scheme, one of the things was, as much as we looked at every addition to the production, every unit in addition that you produce, and at that scale, we were also looking at what will be the impact on our labor force. And when we are talking about MSMEs, that's large, but when we are talking about MSMEs on the other end of the spectrum, we are looking at in-situ solutions for MSMEs wherever they are, because locally, they are the ones who give training, they are the ones who are going to be able to employ locally as much as collectively, if you think, as the large-scale units. So the policy has necessarily underlined the importance of labor and engagement of labor, and that's where we think we are pushing technology, digitalization, as much as we are pushing opportunities for work.
You're right. We will need to work on both ends. On the top end, we need to become global leaders, for sure. There's not even an option for many of our sectors, and we have some big leaders here, sitting here, who run global companies, who have demonstrated what India can do. Indians themselves have already led so many global enterprises, so individual capability is not an issue. So it is probably the tweak that's required, systemic, is also in the work environment, I think, on both. The other comment you made, or let me stick to PLI for a moment. Chinese companies have gone and done things in manufacturing without fear of actually having made losses, because it, in one way or the other, gets made up by the government system, whether it's through hidden subsidies or through loans which continue to be non-performing loans. As you know, their percentage of non-performing loans is about the highest in the world. And do you believe the PLI will compensate enough for a whole variety of Indian businesses now to be globally leading? Because it has to be globally competitive first to become globally leading. Do you think that scheme, because the result is yet to be seen, we've only got one company that's been currently cleared for the scheme. Hopefully many more will get cleared in the coming weeks and months. Is that enough, or is there other things we need to do to remove some of this fear people had of getting into manufacturing over the last decade or so? We saw a little bit of a climb, then we saw a bit of a decline, as you know. Now, and it is necessary. Of course, service is wonderful, but we cannot only be a services nation. We have to have a good spirit of agriculture, services, and manufacturing.
You're right in saying we'll have to see how it goes on the PLI because only one has come and so on. But equally, I'm hearing a lot more companies who are moving out of China wanting to come because they find the policies a lot more attractive, not just the PLI, but overall the ecosystem is now far more facilitative of such companies coming out to locate themselves in India. If that is one of the things. The second, I think, no policy can be the end to itself. It's not as if we've given a solution and that's the end of the story. It keeps evolving as we go on. So that applies even to those industries which are coming into the sunrise sector, for which we've given the policy support through an incentive. But if it's not sort of impertinent to say this now, I equally would want to know from the Indian industry, what is it that they are hesitant about even further? Since 2019, when I've taken charge of the finance ministry, I've been hearing, though the industry doesn't think it's conducive. All right, bring the rate down. All right, tax rate was brought down. And I keep defending industry, private sector, where even provocatively people have asked, what would you want to tell the private sector?